All right, so we're preparing the live, it says.
All right.
Almost ready to go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to For Your Inner Writer with me, your host, Elizabeth Johnston. I'm really excited today to be talking to Regina Bergman, and I'm just going to introduce her with a little bit from her bio. So she's an international best-selling author, public speaker, marketing strategist, and business growth specialist. Regina not only helps transform businesses, both online and offline, and local economies, but helps entrepreneurs realize their vision of impacting lives and changing the world. A serial entrepreneur herself, Regina understands the challenges faced by small business owners. After building a business to 4+ million in annual revenue, only to see it crash with the 2008 economic downturn, Regina has a passion to see that small business owners get the assistance and resources they need to be successful and to thrive. And in fact, 70% of businesses fail within the first 10 years. And I've actually heard statistics that it's like within the first year that, a bunch of them don't even get off the ground. So it's pretty scary. So Regina's personal mission is to reverse that through serving at least 10,000 entrepreneurial firms. One of Regina's superpowers is helping entrepreneurs overcome the overwhelm and fear that keeps them from stepping up and making a difference in the world. And actually, I think that's a similar sort of challenge that writers also have too, or potential or aspiring authors is, there's a fear that keeps them sometimes for stepping up and finding their voice and sharing it with the world. So I definitely want to talk to you about that in a little bit. But to assist, with overcoming this fear, Regina provides entrepreneurs with an individualized roadmap to success for their business. And as demonstrated by her international best-selling book, Bulletproof Marriage, Regina also has a passion for helping families. And knowing the stress that entrepreneurs are under who are struggling in their business, she works to help them create a profitable business, alleviating that stress, which allows for better communication and less stress in the home, thus creating a positive generational impact. Her personal motto is save a business, save a marriage. Welcome to the show.
It is a pleasure to be here, Elizabeth. Grateful to be here.
Well, I met you through Jay Fizzett's JV Challenge a couple of months ago or a month ago. It seems like forever that I've known you. He creates these communities and relationships so quickly.
I know.
It's amazing. You have this challenge that is going on right now, a 21-day challenge that I've been in, and you are just doing awesome things with those entrepreneurs in there. So can you tell me a little bit about how you got to that point? Like, because I know you're a serial businesswoman and you've had a lot of different businesses, but like how do you arrive to in June 2020 doing what you're doing right now?
Through a long journey. Well, and as you mentioned in my bio, I am a serial entrepreneur. I can't remember a time when I wasn't working for myself. Yes, I've worked for other people, but I know that I don't want to do that anymore. That's not where I find my joy. I find my joy in serving others, but I don't want to work for a paycheck. I don't want to work for someone else. So what brought me to this point at this moment? The failure of my business in 2009 had a lot to do with where I am today. That was a great business. It was a 12-year-old business. We were doing great things. We had 6 offices. We were in 2 states. I had 25 internal employees, 200 employees placed with other firms because I was a staffing agency. And we were out of business overnight. And recognizing what that feels like and the long-term impacts of that on family and finances and all of that, I really do have a passion to see that others don't go there. And today, especially with the pandemic and all things around that, businesses are at more risk than ever. But like you mentioned, there's a huge failure rate in small businesses. And there was a study done in California a few years ago, or a program in California, can't think of the name of it at the moment, But they provided all of the resources that people needed, and they had a 90% success rate, I think. I can't remember the numbers exactly. It was this huge transformation. Took people off of the welfare doles. They tracked the money all the way up to the federal government and the taxes that were paid by these businesses. But it just proves that when we get the resources that we need, we can be successful. And a big challenge for business owners, entrepreneurs particularly, is that they come into this entrepreneurial world from having worked for someone else and deciding that they want to go into business for themselves for whatever reason. And typically those boil down to about 2 or 3 different reasons, but they don't know what they don't know about running a business.
Yeah.
And that's where I come in. I get to share more of how to be successful in that business. And so this 21-day challenge, Profit Mastery Challenge, has come about because there's such a need for entrepreneurs to know how to generate profit in their business. Most of the marketing world talks about revenue, that you need, I'll show you how to make 6 figures in revenue. I'll show you how to make 7 figures in revenue. But revenue does nothing if it doesn't drop to the bottom line. It's just work if you don't get to take some of that home. And so this 21-day Profit Mastery Challenge is all about how you get to structure your company so that money goes home with you, not just going out to everybody else. And we're not just adding revenue for the sake of revenue. You can have less revenue with a higher profit margin, when you do things properly, as opposed to having higher revenue and lower profit margins. So that answers that a little bit, but it's just a passion to help people succeed. And right now they need it more than ever.
And you mentioned that program where they had a 90% success rate because they gave them the resources that, and the support that they needed to succeed.
Right.
I think a big myth about entrepreneurs is that we're supposed to do it all by ourselves, right? And we're supposed to know everything and do it, and that if we don't, we're a failure. But when you flip it around and say, no, not everybody is an expert in everything.
Exactly.
The fact that there's a lot of moving parts of a business that you need to be aware of, even if it's just a solo business.
Right.
Yeah.
And we usually come into that business as the technician in the business. We've worked at something, we've been an employee for someone doing a specific thing, and we know that thing really well. And we think, okay, I can make a business out of doing this thing, but we don't know all of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. We don't know how to work on our business instead of working in our business. So working in our business is taking care of every customer that comes in the door or that emails you or that calls you. It's cleaning the toilets. It's doing everything from A to Z in your company and not taking the time to grow your company. And so there are 5 steps that if you focus 20% of your time on those 5 steps, which is really working on your business, it'll generate 80% of your revenue. And we're not doing that as entrepreneurs. Typically, we're not spending time on any of those 5.
Yeah. And that's what you talk about partly in the 21-day challenge as well.
It is.
Yeah.
I also do a 5 Steps to Profit boot camp inside of my Entrepreneurial Leaders Making a Difference Facebook group. About every 6 to 8 weeks, we do that boot camp. And we go in depth into that in the boot camp and what those 5 areas are and how to work in those areas to make sure that you are building a solid foundation.
Wow. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. But first, I want to ask you about your book, Bulletproof Marriage, which is a bestseller. So you wrote that while you were doing other businesses in your life. So you just didn't have the luxury of going to, a tropical island and just, yeah. So, what was it like to write that book? What was the process for you?
Well, let me start by saying I've always felt like I was supposed to write a book. And for years, I felt that. And I thought it was going to be fiction. And I would sit down with a pencil and paper and absolutely nothing would come to my mind. Like, okay, you're just dreaming that you're supposed to write this book. And one day, a good friend of mine and I were talking, and she had a good friend who, on her 42nd wedding anniversary, her husband came in and said, "Oh, by the way, we're getting a divorce." And the woman had no idea that her marriage was in that kind of trouble. And my friend said to me, "I guess there's no such thing as a bulletproof marriage." And it really got me thinking. And I thought, there are a lot of things we can do to protect our marriage. And that was the spark that started it. And so then I created an interview process, and I contacted couples that I knew who had a successful, happy marriage, or at least from the outside, it appeared that way. And I put them through that interview process and recorded those interviews. And those interviews and my own experiences make up a lot of that book. And it was a really neat experience. Forgive the word neat, but it was a really cool experience. And it took me a while. And I was following a publisher online, and we had met at a mastermind, this publisher and I was in one of his classes online one day, and I was determined I was going to self-publish my book when I got it finished, you know. And finally I realized, okay, this is not your forte, and you don't need to do that. You need to get his help. And so I reached out to him actually while he was online teaching, and I said, okay, we need to talk about this book. But it was a real, you mentioned that I was doing other things. So let me kind of go back and set that stage a little bit. My home was a bed and breakfast, so I was caring for guests all the time, taking care of guests. My husband was in kidney failure. He was in dialysis, so we were going to dialysis at least a couple of times a week, and I was sitting in the waiting room for 3 or 4 hours waiting for him on dialysis. He was getting that in a town, like 40 minutes away, and so I would go take him, and I'd sit there with him, and then running my bed and breakfast at the same time. And hadn't started my coaching business yet, but after he passed away, about 6 months later, I started my coaching business, and still running the bed and breakfast, running my coaching business. And he and I had been looking at buying the house next door to us, which was on the market, and making a lake house rental out of that. And I did that. I bought that house, I had it renovated, and I put it into commission as what's it, Airbnb. I had it out on Airbnb and writing my book. So when I finished it, I was really thrilled when we got to the end of it. But it was a multiple year process getting it done. It didn't happen, like you say, go to some beach and sit and write it and pour it out. I think if you're consistent about writing every day, or set some schedule, whether that's every day or 3 times a week or whatever that is, set a schedule, book the time on your own calendar, and make sure you stay with that and get that consistency.
Yeah.
And that really has helped when I was really in writing mode.
Yeah. Well, in fact, For Your Inner Writer, the 30-day program that's going on right now, we just recently looked at our schedule and it's like, okay, so when can we find time in our schedule and choose that time and actually book it into your schedule? Yeah. And that was yesterday, and today now they're going to break down their goal for June, and they have to slot it in for June. And
awesome.
yeah, so it's really important, scheduling and honoring that appointment with yourself, because if it's not in your calendar, it's not going to get done. It's going to get, overshadowed by other things. And
right.
Especially when you're multitasking and running, multiple things like you were, it's amazing that you were able to do that. So it went to bestseller status, and how did that happen?
Well, and it was actually an international bestseller. So I believe it was 5 countries that it was in,
Wow.
and that it was number 1 in, or in the top 10, in whatever. Yeah, number 1 bestseller international. And it, how did that happen? So the publisher that I worked with, they do a hybrid writing process. So they have you speak your book, and then they take it and put it in written form, and then they come back and they give you suggestions, on how you might want to do it. They ask you questions, they go through that. So every word in there was written by me, there were, I think, in the whole process of them reviewing the book, I think there were 2 suggestions that they made to me to update the content, to do something different in the content. And so, like I said, it was a hybrid ghostwriting process, but every word was written by me. And so, um, not to say that there's anything wrong with having a ghostwriter, though. If that's what you need, then do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But anyway, they were responsible for all of the marketing that took it to that bestseller
Wow.
status.
Okay.
Yeah, that was part of the package that they provided.
Cool. And
they
so,
pretty much guarantee you bestseller status.
wow.
And it also got me, as a result, I also was on some podcasts. I had a post in a bridal magazine.
Oh,
So it was fun to have all of those spin-offs from it as well.
neat. So you have a second book, and did you go with a publisher, or did you self-publish that one?
I self-published the others, yes.
And why was that?
I felt that it was probably more a matter of economics than anything, to be honest. It is not inexpensive to hire a publisher to do all of that. It is not inexpensive. And the financial situation I was in with the first one was a little better than, when I did some of the others. But they were written in conjunction with one of my associates in terms of they helped with putting it all together, and then I just put it on Amazon. So I didn't go for bestseller status on them. Part of the reason is they're not as important to me to be bestseller status as this one is, because they're more of a business tool for me. They're a marketing tool, something I use with clients and give to clients a lot. As you know, in 21 Day Challenge, I've given everybody the opportunity to download the free PDF of that, so if they want to buy it, there's opportunities to buy it, but if they just want to get the PDF, then that's fine. I just want to get that information in their hands. So that one, the other business books I've written were not really designed to be a bestseller. That wasn't the focus for them. It was I was thrilled to have the Bulletproof Your Marriage book be a bestseller. And I can't even describe what that feeling was like the day it hit that. That was just such a marvelous moment in my life when it was like, wow, you have an international best-selling book. I was blown away.
And you have another book in the works as well.
I do. So I actually have more than one, but I have one that's kind of in the lead, and then I've got at least 2 more business books that I need to write that are case studies. Because one of the books that I have is how I find $10,000 in any business in 45 minutes. Wow. And so then I've got some books to back that one up that are coming along that are case studies where I prove that. Cool. So the first book is kind of like process, and then the case study books will come out, and some of them will be grouped by industry. But the grief book came about after my husband passed, and I just was prompted to write that book. I was prompted with the name of it. I had an inspiration that, this is what you're supposed to name it, and hurry up and get it out. And I'm behind.
What's the title of it?
The title is How to Mourn with Those That Mourn, Understanding and Preparing for Grief is the subtitle. And I belong to a group on Facebook that are mostly members of my church, and there's, I think, over 5,000 of us in there now that are all widows or widowers. In fact, I met my current husband in that group. As you experience grief yourself, and then you interact with others, you realize that so many people want to comfort you. They want to help you through that process, but they have no idea how to do so. And the other element is that every one of us is going to experience grief. And if you look at the married population, 50% of us are going to lose a spouse, right? So we not only need to understand how to mourn with those that mourn, but we also need to be prepared for our own journey. And, before my husband passed, I kind of thought I knew what somebody was going through. Guess what? You don't have a clue until you go through it. You don't understand what widow's fog is until you go through it. And literally your brain just becomes mush and you can't keep thoughts, and you just feel like you're in a fog. And I had all these businesses going when he passed, and then I had the bed and breakfast, and then I added the coaching, and then I added this rental next door, and I was like, I can't keep track of things. So, the great big sticky pads that you
Yep.
use in meetings and things, I practically wallpapered my bedroom with those. I had about 10 of those on the walls, and everyone was a different area of my life and sub things that I needed to do in those areas. So every time I walked into that room, I could see what was going on in my life, because I knew if I recorded it in a calendar, I wouldn't, paper calendar, I wouldn't think to look at it. If I put it on my computer calendar, I wouldn't think to look at it. But I thought, okay, I just need a big, bold reminder of the things I'm supposed to be doing. And
Mhm.
that stayed on my wall for months.
Wow. Wow.
But yeah, that's how to mourn with those that mourn. And I'm so excited about the cover of it. Your cover is really important. Let me just show you this
Yeah.
one for a moment. This is the cover of Bulletproof Your Marriage.
Huh?
So you see this couple in this bulletproof
Right.
bubble,
Well, yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Fighting off the bullets that the world is giving to them. Well, for my grief book, my husband and I came across a picture of a statue, well, a sculpture, and it's this person sitting on a bench, and their head is hanging down, the shoulders are hanging down, but the whole center of their body is missing. It's just like a hole. You just see right through it.
Wow.
And so we located the sculptor and asked for his permission to use that picture on the front of my book.
Oh my
And
goodness.
and he agreed. He said, just send me a copy of the book when you publish it.
Oh, that's
But
lovely.
yeah, and it's just absolutely perfect. And then my husband is a poet. So think about combining things here. My husband is a poet. So he writes, we're going to take some of the poetry that he's written around grief and put that in the book. And so we'll have some of he's also a photographer. We'll have some of his pictures, we'll have his poetry, and then I'm doing the content. And then we have
Oh,
this
that's wonderful.
beautiful cover with the sculpture on it.
And are you going to be interviewing people this time around for
I
this?
already did. I've
Oh,
already interviewed over 70 people for that book.
wow.
And I started interviewing them one-on-one, and quickly realized that two things. One, I was never going to get through, because I put out a request in the group, told them what I was doing, that group of widows and
Yeah.
widowers, and then asked if anybody wanted to participate in an interview. And about 70 folks raised their hand and said, yeah, we'd like to. And so I started interviewing them one-on-one, realized quickly that I couldn't get all those interviews done. And secondly, every interview sent me back into widow's fog.
Yeah.
Puts you right back. And so I would just tell people, look, by the end of this call, one or both of us are going to be crying. And the one was usually me, and often it was the other person crying as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So instead, I created a form online, a Google form, that they could go out and answer all the questions that I would be asking them if I were doing it one-on-one. So I have their written answers, and their answers are all through the book. As we ask those questions that they answered, again, we ask those and deal with all of those issues inside of the book. So that one I've got to get finished. It's almost finished.
Yes, I can see why, you received a message that you had to write this book, because just like, running a business, we don't know everything that there is to know. And,
Exactly.
to have the resources and, the tools to be able to succeed. And in this case, work through grief and come out on the other side, it's so
Right.
needed. It's so,
It
yeah.
is.
Mhm.
There's a huge need for this book and books like it, because people are just at a loss as to how to help others.
Yeah.
And then the people who are going through the grief are just totally lost for a while.
Mhm.
And so if others know how to support them through that process, then it makes it easier to come out the other side.
Yeah. And, this is how we learn and how we grow, is through stories. This is how we figure things out, is through
Right.
stories. And, I think a lot of times people don't realize that how important stories are in our life, and how they help us problem solve and understand,
Right.
alternatives, uh, of how
Yeah.
to navigate life.
I so agree with you. I tell a story in the beginning of the grief book to try to help people understand widow's fog. And I lived, for a time, my husband and I lived in the southern San Joaquin Valley in California. And there is a fog that comes through there that's called the Tule Elk fog. And it is so thick and overwhelming to be in that fog. And one night, my husband was at work and he asked me to bring him some dinner. And he was just maybe 10 miles from the house where he was working, but kind of out in a field. I mean, he was in the oil industry, and so he was out at a field office. And I headed out to go take this food to him on this 2-lane road, and I couldn't see anything. It was so foggy. I had my window rolled down and my head out just so I could try and see the line, the center divider line.
Wow.
And I remember saying, Columbus was right. The world is flat, and I'm going to fall off any second. Because it just stopped in front of my windshield. The world just stopped. And that's kind of like widow's fog. The world stops. It doesn't,
Wow.
it's not the same anymore.
Yeah.
And you function just like that. It's just like trying to function in that fog.
So the next question that I want to ask you is, for people in For Your Inner Writer, or anybody who's listening to this who wants to write a book, but, can't quite get their head around like why they should invest the time. Like, what are the benefits that will accrue if they get that book that's been rattling around inside of them done?
Well, first, there's just the joy and satisfaction of getting it accomplished and getting it published. And, there are processes that you can go through to get folks to see it and review it. And that's all really nice when, I published mine on Amazon. There are other places to publish as well, but I published everything I have on Amazon. And you can, they have a ranking for their authors, and it's based on reviews and sales, primarily. And that ranking contributes a lot to whether or not you get ranked, or whether or not it's a bestseller. All of that contributes a lot. But you can monetize your book. You can, so first there's the personal satisfaction of doing it, of getting that message out there. Then there's the satisfaction of helping someone else if they get their hands on your book. My Bulletproof Your Marriage book was written to help families, written to help couples that might be struggling in their relationship. I couldn't believe, as I did the research on it, the number of couples that get divorced after their children leave home. It's a huge percentage because they didn't nurture the marriage during those years. They focused on other things, and they didn't have a marriage left when the kids left home. So my book is hopefully to change that and to create that positive generational impact, that this marriage is successful, and because the children grew up in a successful home, successful family, that they go out and create the same thing again, and they go out and create the same thing. And so you get that joy of helping others, that satisfaction of knowing that you can make a difference in the world, that you can make that ripple. And then you can monetize it, and you can build a business around it. And there are a variety of ways to do that. And I'd be happy to visit with anybody who wants, to, I'll tell you what, I will offer your guests or your tribe, if they would like to book an appointment with me to, a 15-minute appointment that we could talk about how they could monetize their book, I'd be happy to do that.
That'd be awesome. Thank
Yeah, you bet. So I'll make sure you have my calendar link so they can do that.
Yeah.
And just book a 15-minute appointment with me, and we'll talk about your book and how you can monetize it and what kind of market that you could seek with it.
Mm-hmm.
But so those are the three things that I can think of right away: personal satisfaction of knowing you've helped others, and then that ability to actually create a revenue stream from it.
And I think, creating a revenue stream, A being the operative word there, is really important.
Right.
To kind of bulletproof your business too, because
Right.
If you have all your eggs in one basket, and then there's some economic downturn, or all of a sudden all online, so yeah, I think it's important that we start thinking more along those lines, and
right.
And for me, I've always been a creative. I've been working at the university. I teach there, and I do have my own, workshops and stuff that I run. including For Your Inner Writer right now. But it has been a learning curve for me to switch from, working for, somebody else, because that's kind of mostly
Right.
what I've been doing, and to be the CEO of me. And I wonder if you
Right.
have any thoughts about, like, how to think like a CEO, like even if you're just running your own business. Do you have any thoughts for us on that?
Well, that's really interesting that you say how to think like a CEO. That's actually a line in my training that I'm doing in my 21-day profit mastery challenge today.
I think that's where I got
So
it from.
maybe. So yeah, gosh, that's a complex answer, and not a simple answer there. Couple of things. If you're going to run a business, first of all, you have to be solving a need in the marketplace, or there's no reason for people to come to you to buy your product. So whatever you're doing, it needs to be solving a problem for someone. And so that kind of leads us into figuring out who is your ideal client, who is it that you want to serve with this book, with this business. And then you have to figure out how you're going to stand out in the marketplace. If you go on Amazon and you look for titles similar to the title to your book, you're going to find a plethora of books by a similar title. There's even one out there that I think there's just a minor difference in capitalization between my book and theirs. So how do you stand out? How do you, so you have to figure that part out. These are all things I teach, and in my 5-day 5 Steps to Profit bootcamp, we cover all of this.
Oh, cool.
It's a free bootcamp that I do in my Entrepreneurial Leaders Making a Difference Facebook group. And we do that about every 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah. So we're coming up, when this 21-day challenge ends, we'll be bumping into the bootcamp again.
And in the 21-day challenge, you'll announce when the 5-day program is happening, or how do you find out about that?
Yeah, we usually announce it coming up in the Entrepreneurial Leaders group. So I've got to look at the calendar and see what the date set for it is. Actually, I know we've got them booked out for the rest of the year. I just have to go look at the calendar and see when it is. But yeah, we'll announce it on Facebook. We'll announce it in the groups. We'll announce it on LinkedIn. It'll be on Instagram as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would love that if we could, if I could send you that information, you could let your tribe know.
Yeah,
it's a free boot camp about the foundations of setting up your business, so that you're spending your time in the right ways. Because, as we said, most entrepreneurs don't know what they don't know about running a business. And I like to say that's where the alligators live, and the alligators will take you out.
Oh my goodness.
That's why businesses fail. That's right. That's why businesses fail, because we don't. Not only do we not know what we don't know, but we don't know where to go to find out.
Yeah, yeah.
It's easy to know where to. It's easy to look up, where do I find out how to register my business or license my business or something of that nature. It's not as easy to look up these other things about building your foundation for your business.
Yeah. And so the 21-day challenge that's ongoing, I think you're about halfway through it now?
We are over halfway through now.
Yeah.
But it's not too late.
Not too late?
You can come in.
Yeah.
You can come on in. You got a little catch-up work to do, but you can come on in. The first 3 or 4 days were really easy assignments, gathering some data, that kind of a thing. But yeah, it's not too late. Come on in. We'll hold your hand. We'll help you get caught up. I'm a great hand holder.
I know. I feel like I am in good hands with you in the challenge there.
Good.
Thank you. And thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and my For Your Inner Writer participants. It's been wonderful.
I hope it's been helpful. And if I can answer any questions for anybody, happy to do so.
Awesome. So I'll put those links below this, and it'll be in the Facebook group, and also I'll give you the link so that you could share it in your group if you like. And
awesome.
Thank you so much.
Do you have my calendar link, or do I need to give you that?
Yeah, you need to give me your calendar.
I'm just going to pop it into the chat for you.
Okay. And I'll include that as well. That'd be great.
And it is case sensitive because it's a bit.ly link.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Oh, okay. Oh, that's great. Yeah.
yeah.
That's the perfect one.
Easy
Thanks.
breezy.
Thanks again and have a great day.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye-bye.